A very good afternoon, everybody. This is the last session of our this second season of presentation. We started from 11th and today is the 15th, and this is the evening session where you are going to read presentations on 20th century literature. The setting of the 20th century literature. Let us have an overview of the topics on which you are going to make presentations. Okay, so first we will have Aarti's presentation on the birthday party as a Pinteresque play, followed by Anjali's on modernism and its characteristics. Avani will make presentation on Albert Camus and Absurdism. Bhavyata on Esotericism in the works of Virginia Woolf and James Joyce, followed by Drashti on World War and its influence on literature and films. Gayatri will read on Animal Farm as dystopian literature. Ghanshyam will be on the Beat generation and its influence. Gopi's presentation on Dadaism as an art form. Hetal's on stream of consciousness and exploration of literary technique. And finally, the last one will be by Hina on Expressionism as art movement. The system of our presentation was something like this. The entire system wherein you have submitted your works in Google Classroom. We have a Google Classroom where you all have submitted your works, your PPT in advance. And through this, you are making the presentations of your slides through Google Classroom. In Google Classroom, you are evaluated by teacher on this rubric, wherein your subject knowledge, your organization of your ideas, the way you answer the questions, your elocution, the mechanics of writing, your eye contact and non-verbal things. And then the final two parameters are about research-based academic writing, where originality of writing, the sources which are referred, how are they cited. We follow MLS style documentation. So how well you have done that also is referred in this rubric for the evaluation by teacher. There is a system of self and peer evaluation also. So in this online form, you are doing self and peer evaluation. Today is the final day, so we already have the responses from previous 4 days. Today morning session also we have ended, so they also have started giving their responses. And you can see in a general way that how you are evaluated by your classmates, by your peer, how you are. So that also gives you an idea that comparatively also how well or are you performing or how you can still improve from the way you are performing. So, and it is quite fair judgment that you all are passing on when you are evaluating yourself as well as the other students also. This is also transparent, so when you submit your evaluation, you can see this also. And you can take a screenshot also to see that how you are evaluated by your classmates. So that is the threefold system of evaluation in the presentation, and we hope that everything together might be helping you in improving a little bit of things every time. So by the end of 20 presentations that you might have done in 4th semester, your presentation skills will be of very good quality. Like, nobody can beat you or nobody can advise you how to give a good presentation. At least that kind of skills you all might have acquired from making the presentation, as well as observing your classmates making presentation and the feedback that are given in all the ways. So the technicalities of presentation, from there to the content of how to make effective presentation on a given topic, everywhere you might be acquiring your skills. Okay, so let us start today's presentation with the first one. This Aarti, you can start your presentation.
Hello everyone. Today is the last day of semester two's presentation, in which we are going to present on paper number 110, in which I am going to deal with this topic, the birthday party, as a Pinteresque play, which is written by Harold Printer. This is my personal information. Points to ponder about playwright, about the play. The birthday party as a Pinteresque play, conclusion, and then references. About the playwright. Harold Printer was a British playwright and he born into a working class family. He acted with touring companions until 1959. His early one act play were followed by the full length The Birthday Party, which is written in 1958. His next major plays are includes The Caretaker and The Homecoming. Established his reputation as an innovative and complex dramatist, sometimes considered as a belonging to the theatre of absurd. He often used disjoint small talk and lengthy pauses in dialogues to convey a character's thought, which often contradicts his speech. Pinter's later plays include Old Times, No Man's Land, Betrayal, Mountains Language, Moonlight, and Celebration. He also wrote radio and television plays, as well as a screenplays for example, the Go Between, the French Lieutenant's Woman, the Handmaid's Tale, the Sleuth. In 2005, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. About the play. Harold Printer is mostly acclaimed as a wonderful playwright of 20th century despite his other roles of poet and actor and so on. He was influenced by the modernist playwright Samuel Beckett and in his plays, but as a tribute to his unique style of writing, Printer was accredited accredited with adjective Pinteresque, which makes him different from other writers of the period. His 1958 play, The Birthday Party, serves a best example of the justification of Pinteresque as a remarkable distinctive. The play employs a very few characters and portrays the life in the post-war world. The birthday party drama. It is a drama in a three act, which is produced in 1958 and published in 1959. Pinter's first full-length play established his trademark comedy of meanness, in which a character is suddenly threatened by the vague horror at large in the outside world. The action takes place entirely in the snobby rooming house where Stanley, who is the protagonist of the play, and he is a lazy young broderer, is shaken out of his false sense of security by unrevealed. A birthday party staged by Stanley's landlady soon turned into an exhibition of violence and terror. The birthday party as a Pinterest play. Harold Pinter is widely regarded as one of the most influential representative of British theatre in the 20th century. The significance of Tremedius' contribution to modern theatre has been summed up in one theatrical terminology, namely Pinteresque. Through Pinter's play are characteristics of minimal plot, limited characters, The dialogues are filled with powerful tension. The word play literally means have to fun, and thus postmodern hits at a kind of celebration of something. In order to mark transition, the Pinterest in the birthday party offers a clear-cut distinction between the two periods, and hence takes in both the elements of modernism and postmodernism movement in the history of English literature and the post-war war world in general. This makes Pinter as an absurdist in style while drifting away from complete sense of absurd writer. The very fact puts his play in the list of comedy of meanness which intermingle the elements of tragedy and comedy. The word Pinterest defines the period of modernism after the 1950s when the play was written. It was a time when disorder was the order of the day. The fundamental belief that man is a social animal proved to be a failure because the disorder was due to the fragmentation of particular social institution and thereby confusion prevailed in the society. Harold Printer is trying to portray the similar 20th century culture when he divides from the usual custom of giving enough background of information about the characters. In this play, he also criticized trying to criticize the 20th century movements, 20th centuries, and they are known by their age that is simply some meaningless number and not by their professional or their relationship with each other. This lack in background information may mean that the characters are different independent individuals with little connection between them who are yet to create a meaning of their life. In this play, there is not any kind of description about characters except their name or ages. Pinter can be seen in his way of presenting the most ethical aspect of his time through Stanley and Goldberg. Those antithetical aspects are nothing but conflict within a person about either maintaining a questioning attitude towards the society or being complicit about it. Pitti and Goldberg, who are the workers of government, uh, Goldberg and Macon, who are the servants of government, use a powerful rhetoric who treats or continues the questioning Stanley and Stanley is representing, he becomes silent when, and his silence is a representation of capitalist ideology. Uh, Conclusion: Harold Pinter's play usually starts with laughter. He uses funny elements, and eventually the setting turns into psychological physical violence. His plays are more surprising for the audience, and during these stages, the play examines the identity through the existentialism in the form of the absurd theater. The play shows how a man in the entertainment of other has been ignored and wholly abandoned. The play depicts the mental and natural depression of post-war individual and reflects how people are accepted from society. Obscurity is the most prominent component in the birthday party that takes place through the conversation and interaction that gives us some significant clues to understand the ambiguity of world where we live in, and Harold Printer creates an ambiguous story to recount the current situation of the world. This is my work cited. And thank you. If you have any questions, then you can ask me.
Aarti, my question is, what is the significance of the title of the play, The Birthday Party?
The title of the play is represent the very inner meaning uh, of the life that in life the birthday is come only one time in entire year, and the same at the same time in this play also that Herald Printer tries to or Stanley, who is protagonist, who is a reminder, who is trying to remind his good past and good past in his present time. So this is the significance of the title.
Aarti, my question is, what is Herald Pinter's main contribution in theatre of absurd?
In theater of absurd, he uses absurdity in his plays, uh, 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 and he mainly used the theme of absurdity in in a style of comedy of Minas. In this play also we can find the theme of absurdity. So this is a contribution. Thank you. Today, on the date of 15th March, today is the last day of our presentation season 2. Uh, Today, I am going to my presentation on the topic of modernism and its characteristics. This is my personal information. Points to ponder: introduction, definition, characteristics of modernism, break from traditional forms and conventions, interest in new technologies and science, quote and work cited. Introduction. Modernism is a literary movement which started in late 19th century, late and early 20th century. Modernism is taken for a historical information rather than a concept or even a fantasy. Some first formulation is necessary. Modernism seems once again something for elite sensibilities, for special minds and rarefied understanding, and once again the introductory book seems to eager to mimic its mystified object. Ironically, sincerely, demystifications would work ever better where modernism exclaimed before being exposed. Modernism introductory simplicity could be high on the list of ready commodities, strong sell, and it could be bridge that leads us to all back to the world of monographic complexity. It affected the literary form and expression. It is also known as a self-conscious break in both prose and poetry. Definitions: modernism or the modernesque or art nouveau that is honestly and logically modern in the sense of being contemporary and functional and what is merely affected. These extreme digressions are the result of a desire to get completely away from the fallacious period styles and to do something entirely new with no ties to the past. Modernist writing a good idea too hard are applying a categorical logic to architecture with excessive rigor and forgetting that architecture must have an aesthetic soul as well as a material body have become illogical through an excess of a narrow logic. Modern social gospel is a reflection of the models of the modes of social thinking developed during the 19th century and 20th century. The movement from Charles Darwin to Herbert Spencer was the movement from evolution as a grandiose a philosophy of inevitable progress. Characteristics of modernism in an era characterized by industrialization, the nearly global adoptions of capitalism, rapid social change, and advances in science and the social sciences. Modernists felt a growing alienation incompatible with Victorian morality, optimism, and convention. New ideas in psychology, philosophy, and political theory kindled a search for new modes of expression. First characteristics modernism and science the problem of modernizing a Christian is set for him principally by the development of modern science. It is inevitable that there should appear a similarity between modernist theology and scientific method. Modernism and individualism. Modernism is implicated in the modern world also by the absorption of certain typically modern social attitudes. Faith in democracy, a second characteristics attitude of modern life has been the belief in democracy. This is the political and economic concomitant of individualism. The new humanism, a third characteristic attitude of modern thought, may be summed up in the phrase the new humanism. The backgrounds of this humanism are to be found as already suggested in the Renaissance discovery of full and lusty human life. The new humanism has been characterized by a new anthropocentrism, the optimistic bias. A fourth characteristic of modern thinking is optimism. Historically, this seems to have come about when rationalism degenerated into sentimentalism. Although Leibniz grounded optimism in a philosophical theory of pre established harmony in the universe. Break from traditional forms and conventions. Architecture has to become an art once again. Architects say the painting and sculpture have no relationship to architecture. On the contrary, facts past and present indicate no, not only that collaboration is possible, practices and desirable. The problem is not whether integration can be realized, but how it is to be realized. George Nelson recognizes when he says the traditional notion of nailing naked young men and women onto walls or pasting murals to the insides of buildings seems pretty dead. Many of our architects today are unconscious of the debt they owe such men as Mondrian, then Van Doesburg, Venton Garlu, and others who pioneered the modern style. Since some architects apparently aren't aware of the part that painting, for instance, can play in conjunction with architecture. It might not be amiss to enumerate just a few ways in which murals could contribute to architectural form. Interest in new technologies and science. In early 20th century, one of the major figures of the literary movement, who was Ezra Pound, and who was the American writer and critic. Modernism, science and technology renders a productive additional to today's modern studies. The insights Morrison offers through do not radically alter our perspective on modernism and technology. Morrison's conclusion that individual disciplines are often in the process of being reshaped by new cross-disciplining collaborations such as those of critical disability studies, science studies, and eco-criticism. His study certainly provides substance for rigorous debate. Morrison sets a fine example for future scholars of modernism interest in engaging with today's fundamental rethinking of the universe via science. This is the quote by Arthur Erickson. Modernism released us from the constraints of everything that had gone before with a euphoric sense of freedom. Here is my work cited. If you have any query, then ask me.
Anjali, my question is, what is modernist attitudes towards this movement?
Modernist attitude towards this movement, who starting with late 18th century and early 20th century, is towards uh, applying a categorical logic uh, and changing society in art, science, and many political and art changing.
Anjali, how did the modernism reflect the changes in society during the late 19th century?
Modernism reflected the changes in society during the late 19th century, in literature. Charles Dickens, who wrote about workers and changes society, and other side, political change artistic change, and also architecture and paints, and also changed, like urbanization. Thank you. Very good noon to you all on a last but not least day of the presentation. I'm Avani Jani, and today I'm going to discuss about Albert Camus and absurdism. These are points that I'm going to deal with: absurd, absurdism, Albert Camus, philosophy of Albert Camus, absurdity and suicide, conclusion, and work citation. Absurd. The word absurd means stupid and unreasonable or silly in a humorous way. Absurd refers to something that is extremely unreasonable, illogical, or foolish. It can be also referred to a situation or event that is bizarre, ridiculous, or nonsensical. Here is absurdism. As per Merriam-Webster dictionary, absurdism is works of the absurd often feature surreal, fantastical elements and explore themes of alienation, meaninglessness, and breakdown of language and communication. Absurdism is a philosophical and literary movement that emerged in the 20th century, particularly in France, and is associated with the writers such as Albert Camus, Samuel Beckett, and Ionesco. Absurdism is characterized by the belief that the human condition is fundamentally absurd, that human beings must confront the meaninglessness and absurdity of existence. Thomas Nagel puts some question which is raised by absurdism, such as even if what we did now were going to matter in a million years, how could that keep our present concerns from being absurd? If their mattering now is not enough to accomplish that, how would it help if they mattered a million years from now? What we do now will matter in a million years, could make the crucial difference only if it is mattering in a million years, depended on a mattering period. Same thing like karma, that so everyone says that karma will give you fruit, but which fruit, where, when, that is unanswerable questions. So it's same thing is absurdism explains that our deed and what we are doing right now will pay us, but where, that we don't know. Whether what we do now will matter in a million years could make a crucial difference only if it is mattering in a million years, depended on mattering period. Deepak Solia sir discussed absurdism while talking about Albert Camus. Absurdism suggests that there is no inherent meaning or purpose to life, but that we can create our own meaning through our actions and choices. Absurdist works often use surreal or fantastical elements and challenges the reader to viewers' expectations of what is normal or rational. Absurd refers to something that is nonsensical or illogical, while absurdism is a philosophical and literary moment that explores the idea of fundamental meaninglessness of existence and the need of individuals to create their own meaning. During the period as a reaction to the mass killings and destruction that characterized those wars, leading many writers to believe that human existence was meaninglessness in the context of war. Absurdism can be seen as a critique of the idea that the nations engage in the wars to achieve some ultimate goal, as such goals are illusory and the brutality of war is ultimately against humanity. Kierkegaard and Camus were influential writers who proposed a solution to the problem of absurdism. Kierkegaard's The Sickness Unto Death argues that individual can find meaning in life by developing a personal relationship with God. On the other hand, Camus considers adopting or creating meaning frameworks such as religion as philosophical suicide, as it involves submitting to an idea of being beyond and being beyond one's observed limitations of freedom. Camus suggests that the three solutions to absurdism. The first is suicide, where a person ends their life due to considering it meaningless, boring, or painful. The second is the acceptance of the absurd, where one acknowledges the meaninglessness of life but still chooses to live life to the fullest extent of freedom without submitting to any religious or moral consent. The third solution involves rebelling against the absurd and creating one's own meaning in life, even in the face of meaninglessness. Here Camus has not only given the three solution, but also through his work he has given a solution. We can see that the first is suicide, the happy death. A happy death is a work by Albert Camus, and which defines that one can die if it is not if he is not finding meaning in his life. And the very next one, the third solution, in which has rebelling against the absurd. In that we can see the myth of Sisyphus, that Sisyphus has a terrible fate to move rock here and there, but still he chooses to move it here and there, and fights against the fate every day. So this is the two works that by by which Camus gave us the idea of what can we do in the absurd world. Albert Camus. Albert Camus was a French philosopher, writer, and journalist who is best known for his philosophical essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, and his own novels, The Stranger and the Plague. Camus was a leading figure of existentialist movement and a proponent of absurdism, a philosophy that explores the meaninglessness of human existence and the need for individuals to create their own meaning. Camus grew. Camus grew up in a poverty in Algeria and moved to France to study philosophy. He became involved in a French resistance during World War II and was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1957 for his literary and philosophical contribution to the world. In the myth of Sisyphus, Camus argues that human existence is fundamentally absurd and meaningless, but that individual can rebel against the meaninglessness by embracing the absurdity of existence and creating their own meaning. He famously wrote, "The struggle itself toward the highest is enough to fill men's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy." Camus' novels explored the theme of alienation, isolation, and the absurdity of human existence. The Stranger tells the story of a Masrid, a man who kills an Arab for no apparent reason and who is condemned to death for his lack of remorse. The Plague is a novel about a fictional town that is struck by a deadly disease and explores the theme of suffering, death, and struggle to find meaning in the face of adversity. Personally, I am very attracted to the idea of the stranger, that it is very absurd as per my opinion, that in this the narrator, the hero, kills an Arab boy for just no reason. They were standing, and the Arab boy was having a knife, and it reflected the sun, and it reflected on the face of the hero, and hero was irritated by it, and he suddenly kills the Arab boy. And when the police asked that why you killed him, then he gave no reason, and he was also not guilty for it, and he dies very happily. Camus' work has had a significant influence on philosophy, literature, and popular culture, and his ideas continue to be studied and debated today. Philosophy of Albert Camus. Sagi and Sagi claims that in their book that Camus' philosophy is dynamic and changes over time. The two pivots of this philosophy, which also establish its boundaries, are the myth of Sisyphus and the rebel. In these two works, where, one can find the philosophy which is differentiating in both works with the same writer, Albert Camus. That Albert Camus has also written the myth of Sisyphus and happy death. So in as I mentioned again earlier, that the both is a very different and giving very different message, and it refers to us that which message we are conveyed to. His philosophy of absurdism can be exemplified in his essay Le Mythe de Sisyphe. Albert Camus gives a quite different account of philosophy and politics of existentialism from that of Sartre. Perhaps the most striking difference from Sartre is his conception of the absurd. He many things that he is an existentialist, but no, he was not. He was he was existentialist, but in a different way. He was giving definitions of absurdism. He was bringing a term absurdism, and many refers that absurdism and existentialism are very similar, but there are slightly difference between them. For Sartre, absurdity belongs to the world prior to activity of a consciousness, while Camus' idea of the absurd is closer to Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. The absurd is the direct consequences of the absence of God. Without God, the discrepancy between human aspiration and the world is acute. The human condition is characterized by the probability of suffering and the certainty of death, a fate which human reason cannot accept as reasonable. The absurd comes with the realization that the world is not rational. At this point of his effort, man stands face to face with the irrational. He feels within him his longing for a happiness and for a reason. The absurd is born of his confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. The confirmation is the epitomized in the plague, in the painful death of a child. Camus' conclusion on the Sisyphus is that one must imagine Sisyphus happy. This statement of considering Sisyphus happy is a very problematic. I cannot say problematic, but it is very influential. The influencer that Sisyphus is happy. How can we say that Sisyphus is not happy? He is moving rock here and that, but what if he is finding joy in it? As we all are doing nowadays, that we are living very monotonous life, but still we keep living. And what if we are happy? So he gives the idea that if you are not happy with your life, then there is way of death. You can die. He says indirectly in this in his works that Sisyphus is living happily. He is moving rock, and in very next his work, he is his hero is committing suicide just because he is not able to find any meaning in his life, and he was feeling very absurd. Absurdity and Suicide. After reading Camus, the most profound and significant philosophical question is whether or not to end one's own life. For deciding the value of life itself is the essential inquiry of philosophy. As per Daniel Shaw's research, Camus' central thesis in the myth of Sisyphus is that suicide is not the proper response to, nor is it the solution of the problem of absurdity. Yet many of his literary protagonists either commit suicide or are self-destructive in other ways. He argues that the protagonists that best live up to the characteristic of the absurd man, and that Camus outlines the myth uniformly either commit suicide or consent to their destruction by behaving in a such a manner as to invite death. It is my contention that This raises serious questions about the validity of Camus' argument that suicide is not the proper response to the recognition that life is absurd. One response to the absurd, according to Camus, is the suicide. Camus argues that suicide is a philosophical problem and that the only serious question is whether or to not take one's own life. However, Camus ultimately rejects suicide as a solution, stating that it is an escape from the absurd rather than resolution of it. One may find that Albert Camus is in favor of suicide and celebrates death through his famous absurd works, A Happy Death. A Happy Death. There is a reference to suicide in Happy Death by Albert Camus. The main character, Patrick, contemplates suicide at various points throughout the novel as he struggles with the meaning of life and his own morality. In fact, the opening sentence of the book reads, Mother died today, or maybe yesterday. I can't be sure, which hints at the sense of detachment from life and a fascination with death. When we look at the topic of death only, then we find that anyone who is dead, we are very sympathetic to him and or him or her family. And when the topic of death come, one very feel very sad, but but not in case of Albert Camus hero. The in a Happy Death, the hero is feeling nothing about his mother's death. In fact, the Deepak sir also mentioned that he was sitting very next to the coffin of his mother, and he was enjoying his cigarette rather than mourning on the death of his mother. In one particularly significant scene, Practice has a dream in which he contemplates jumping from a high cliff. This dream serves as a metaphor for his desire to escape from the mundane and unsatisfying aspects of life and to embrace the unknown, even if it means risking everything. While society is not explicitly condemned and celebrated in the novel, it is presented as a possible outcome of existential struggles and a means of asserting one's own freedom and autonomy. However, the novel ultimately suggests that the true happiness and fulfillment can be found in embracing life and accepting one's own morality rather than trying to escape from it. At any street corner, the feeling of absurdity can strike any man in the faces. One can feel absurdity in very beautiful things, in a flower also. It is absurdism. Absurdism comes to us in a very sudden manner. We won't even realize it. We won't even realize it as it is in distressing nudity in its lights without effulgence. It is exclusive, but the very difficulty deserves a reflection. It is probably true that man remains forever unknown to us, and that there is in him something irreducible that escapes us. But practically, I know men and recognize them by their behavior, by the totality of their deeds, by the consequences caused in life, by their presence. In this particular passage, Camus is suggesting that at any moment, a person can suddenly become aware of the absurdity of their own existence. The feeling that life lacks inherent meaning or purpose. This feeling is difficult to articulate because it is not something tangible or concrete, but rather a sense of emptiness or pointlessness that pervades human life. However, despite this inherent exclusive of the feeling of absurdity, Camus argues that it is worth reflecting on because it highlights the facts that human beings are fundamentally mysterious and unknowable. He suggests that while we may never fully understand another person, we can still recognize them by their actions and impact they have on the world around them. While the feeling of absurdity may be difficult to grasp, but we can still come to understand something about the human condition by observing the way that people are their people live their life and the consequences that result from their actions. Conclusion. Despite this bleak outlook, absurdism also offers a sense of freedom and possibility as it encourages individuals to reject the false promise of tradition and religion and morality and to embrace their own unique perspective on the world. While it may be difficult to come to terms with the idea that life lacks inherent meaning or purpose, absurdism suggests that individuals can find meaning and fulfillment in their own personal pursuit and experience rather than external ideas or systems. Overall, Camus and his philosophy of absurdism continue to be influential in the modern philosophical discourse, particularly in the discussion around the nature of existence and the human condition. Here I am above cited. If there is any question.
Only can the pursuit of happiness and the acceptance of death consist.
Yes, happiness and acceptance of death can coexist, but it depends on the person and his maturity. That is he able to accept uh, the uh, the ultimate truth of life that death will come now, not now, never, not now, but someday it will come, and one have to recognize the death that it will come surely, and one have to live happily even after knowing the ultimate truth. So yes, if we can accept the truth, then we can live happily, and even if not, then the one life, and we have to spend it in while very mourning about the death. So that's it.
Yes, you discussed about absurdity and suicide. Is there a moral or ethical obligation to continue living even in the face of overwhelming suffering despair?
uh, I think there are two points in which I can give the answer of this question. First one is a religious aspect, and second one is a person's own mentality. One religion aspects, as per Hinduism tells that men, human have rebirth after having a life of from 24 lakh yonis, I think so. Yes, so after having this much lives, one has a human life, and in this human life, he or she has to do religious practice, and through which he or she can get moksha, and so this how one can live a whole life. And the second aspect if is that person's own morality. Then if the as per the hero of Albert Camus, if he is not enjoying his life, he is committing suicide, that he is finding absurdity in his life. And so yes, if as per my opinion, one if is one if is who is not having interest in life, then it can lead to suicide to someone, and it is very it depends on the mentality of a person, that if he wants to live or die. So that's it. Thank you.
Very good afternoon to everyone. This is our last day of presentation. My presentation topic name is Esotericism in the works of Virginia Woolf and James Joyce. My personal information, table of contents. Introduction, Virginia Woolf, Esotericism in Virginia Woolf's work, James and his works of Esotericism, comparison, Esotericism in Virginia Woolf and James Joyce, conclusion and citation. Here is a definition of esotericism. Introduction. Virginia Woolf and James Joyce are two of the most important writers of the modernist period in literature. They were all pioneers of new and experimental forms of writing that broke away from the traditional structures and conventional of the past. Virginia Woolf is known for her pioneering use of the stream of consciousness technique, which allow her to delve deeply into the inner thoughts and emotions of her characters. Her works, including Orlando and Two Lighthouse, are renowned for their exploration of modernist themes such as identity, memory, and the fragmentation of self. James Joyce is widely considered one of the most influenced writer of the 20th century. His novels, including Ulysses and Findings Wake, are known for their complex and innovative use of language, as well as their exploration of themes such as the search of meaning in chaotic world and the nature of human consciousness. These two writers used esotericism in their works to explore deeper meaning and break traditional literary rules. They used symbols, myths, and occultism in their writing, creating complex works that are not easy to understand. Through the use of esotericism, they pushed the limits of what was considered acceptable in literature and produced works that still have an impact on readers today. Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf was born in 1882 in London to a literary family. Woolf's most famous works, such as Mrs. Dalloway and To the Lighthouse, are known for their innovative use of the stream of consciousness technique. These techniques allow the readers to experience the inner thoughts and emotions of the character in a more intimate way, breaking down the traditional boundaries between narrator and character. Woolf's works also incorporate, incorporate symbolism, which involves the use of objects, action, or ideas to represent larger abstract concept. In To the Lighthouse, for example, the lighthouse itself is a symbol of the human desire for order and stability in a chaotic and unpredictable world. Woolf was also interested in spiritualism and occult, evident in works like The Waves. Overall, Woolf's use of esotericism in her writing allowed her to create works that were invo- innovative and challenging, pushing the boundaries of traditional literary forms and inspiring writers today. Uh, uh, Esotericism in Virginia Woolf's works. Virginia Woolf was deeply interested in esotericism and incorporate its themes and symbols into her writing. Woolf's interest in esotericism also extend to issue of gender and sexuality. In her famous novel Orlando, She explored the idea of gender as a fluid and ever changing concept, drawing on esoteric themes such as alchemy and magic to explore the complexity of gender identity. The significance of these esoteric themes in Woolf's work lies in impact on her literary style and message. By incorporating these themes, Woolf was able to explore complex idea and emotions in a way that was both deeply personal and universally relevant. Her use of esoteric symbolism and themes allowed her to communicate her ideas in a way that was both poetic and philosophical, while also challenging readers to think deeply about the nature of reality, identity, and meaning. Overall, Woolf's use of esotericism in her writing is a testament to her creativity, originality, and ability to push the boundaries of literary forms and content. The second writer is James Joyce. James Joyce was an Irish writer born in Dublin in 1882. He is known for his important contribution to modernist literature. His famous works, include Dubliners and portraits of an artist as a young man, Ulysses and Finn Gensweg. Joyce's writing often deals with themes of identity, religion, and nationalism, and reflects the political and religious turmoil in Ireland during his lifetime. One form of esotericism in Joyce's writing is his use of wordplay and allusion, which show his extensive knowledge of literary mythology and philosophy. Ulysses is an example of this, as it contains refers to Homer's Odysseus, and its main character, Leopold Bloom, is modeled after the Greek hero Odysseus. Joyce also used mythological motifs in his writing, especially in Finn Gensweg, which is based on the myth of Adam and Eve's fall, and contains reference to Irish folklore, in ancient mythology, and various philosophical systems. Overall, Joyce's use of esotericism added depth and complexity to his writing, making his works challenging, innovative, and multi-layered. How esotericism used by James Joyce was deeply interested in esotericism and incorporated its themes and symbols into his writing. Here are some ways in which he incorporated esotericism into his work. Numerology and hermeticism. First is numerology. Joyce was fascinated by numerology and incorporated it into his writing in several ways. For example, in Ulysses, the number 12 is significant as it represents the 12 hours of the day, the 12 signs of the zodiac, and the 12 apostles. Similarly, the number 3 is important in Finnegan's Wake, as it represents the Trinity and the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The Hermeti- Hermeticism. Joyce also drew on the principles of Hermeticism, a tradition of esoteric philosophy that emphasized the unity of all things. In his work, he explored the idea of the universe as a single interconnected system, drawing on Hermetic principles to create a surreal and dream-like world. Joyce's use of esoteric themes in his writing style was significant because it made his work more intricate and thought-provoking. He included things like numerology and hermeticism, to explore important topics such as life and death and how everything is connected. It showed that he was very clever and philosophical in his writing and wanted his readers to think deeply about the meaning of life and who they are. Comparing esotericism in Woolf and Joyce, Virginia Woolf and James Joyce were both interested in esotericism, which means they used symbols and hidden meanings to explore spiritual and metaphysical themes in their writing. Woolf used symbols and mystical ideas in a subtle way to explore spiritual and metaphysical topics. She challenged traditional views of gender and identity. It contains Joyce use numerology, alchemy, and hermeticism directly to explore the nature of consciousness and connect between everything. The way Woolf and Joyce used esotericism in their writing affected their works differently. Woolf's use of symbols and hidden meaning made her writing deeper and more meaningful. She also explored social norms around gender and sexuality. In contrast, Joyce's use of esotericism was more intended, creating a world full of hidden meaning in every detail. He used many different esoteric tradition to make his writing very rich and full of hidden message. Woolf and Joyce use symbols and hidden meaning in their writing, but in different ways. Woolf used them subtly to explore spiritual themes and challenge social norms about gender and identity. Joyce used them more directly to create a complex and meaningful world. To conclude, the discussion covered how Virginia Woolf and James Joyce use esotericism in their writing, with Woolf subtly using symbols and mysticism to explore spiritual and metaphysical themes in challenge social norms, while Joyce used numerous alchemy and hermeticism more directly to create a complex and layered world. Their use of esotericism had a significant impact on their work, adding depth and meaning to Woolf's prose and creating wealth of hidden meaning and allusion in Joyce's writing. This encourages further exploration of how esotericism has influenced literature and cultural and intellectual history. Uh, Here is my work citation. If anyone has any question, they can ask.
Bhavyata, what are the key symbols in esotericism?
As per my reading, and as I know that some symbols is in the esotericism. We In esotericism there is a vast symbols, but I know some few, that is pentagram, tree of life, Ouroboros, eye of provisions, and alchemical provisions. Sorry, alchemical symbols. They are symbols in we can take in metaphysical and many types of symbols. Anyone?
Can you give the name of other writers who give works in modern esotericism?
There is many writers in esotericism, but I give two name who is very famous and pioneers in this esotericism. First is Ezra Pound, and second is William Faulkner. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today is the last day of our presentation season 2. On the last day of presentation season 2, I'm going to present my presentation on World War and its influence on literature and films. So let's start with the presentation. This is my personal information. Table of content, studying war, the literature of war in literature, how World War first changed literature, how World War second, here is a mistake, how World War first or second in the films and books, which is based on World Wars. Studying was the PMLA, so this is a publication, the publication of Modern Language Association, the major association of professor of English, has called for papers on new direction in literary criticism for the 20th century. In a World War II era poem of modern poetry, Walt Stephen declared that among other things, modern poetry has to think about wars. In a similar fashion, as the Iraq War grinds on now into its sixth year, and it has become painfully obvious that despite some wishful thinking in the wake of Vietnam, American ground wars are hardly a thing of the past. So, in the modern poetry, Walt Stephen declare about things that modern poetry should, modern poet should think about war poetries. We know why the subject of war and the military have fallen out of favors, and why most professors in English as well as history prefers to oppose war and criticize the military rather than to study them. The Vietnam War changed the meaning of war and of the military in this country, at least on the left, and the cohort of professors that for the most part has dominated and set trends in this field in the last 20 years. So this country means America. This in the country, in this point, this writer talk about the Vietnam War and America, history of America and wars. The American experience in World War First by English professors in now beginning to be broken, most notably with Richard Slotkin's 2005 Lost Battalions. So this is the work by Richard Solkins, The Great Wars and the Crisis of American Nationality. So in this work, he is talking about how World War affect the history and how World War influenced the writers of that time to write about war genres. The literature of wars, as long as there has been wars, there have been writers trying to understand it, turning battlefield's horror into a narrative, trying to make something useful out its debris. So there are many writers who write about wars, and from Stephen Krantz, the Red Badge of Courage, which has remains in print since its publication in 1895. So this is a work by Stephen Krantz, and Ernest Hemingway's most famous work on war, Farewell of Arms, a book that dramatized the author's youth
youthful experience during World War First. So we all know about the Ernest Hemingway's journalism, and he was also a part of war in World War First, and also he was part of World War Two. So in this work also he write about his experience of wars. Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, the Vietnam War novel that was finalized for the Pulitzer Prize, and the National Book Prize Critical Circle Award in 1990. War has inspired some of the best known works in the American canon. Today, our war literature is no less vivid and troubling, even if it is less grand in the themes and less demure in detail. So, also we know that Hollywood and Bollywood both have these things in. They are exploring more about war genres. Like we have these patriotic movies and patriotic songs and poems. So the war themes are very explored by the writers and filmmakers. This is a quotation by Ernest Hemingway in his work Men at War. There was no really good true war books during the entire 4 years of the war. The only true writing that came through during the war was in the poetry. One reason for this is poets are not arrested as quickly as prose writers. So, in this quote, you can see that the prose writers are more arrested by the armies. Like when they were writing about war, they were arrested, and also their books were also burned. And this history, we all know that war has a very dark history. Like their writers writing things and manuscripts were burnt by the government and militaries. So in this work also he write about a man who was a part of battle and who was part of wars. British literature after World War II. World War II ended in 1945. We know that started in 1939 and ended in 1945, and its conclusion marked an important shift in Great Britain's global rule. For the first time, Britain was a secondary imperial power, something that was painful for many British citizens. The expectations after the war were that the economy would again rise, but inflation and unemployment lead to be an overall increase in national cynicism. Postmodernism found most of its success in American and was difficult to identify in England, as many modernist writers continued to write well into the 1940s and 50s. So we know that this modernism and postmodernism, this both writers were writing about wars, and after World War also they are exploring the genre of wars. War in literature, there are many other writers of 20th and 21st century that are still writing novels today. It is difficult to predict what will be popular in future, but it is clear that literature reflects the history of its time. The literature of war takes a widely varieties of approaches in its efforts to comprehend the war experience and encompass a scholarship on a number of genres, including poetry, dramas, short stories, novels, journals, diaries, oral historians, memories, and letters all have war genre. While early scholarship focused most fully on a white male soldiers, it has gradually evolves to include genders and minority studies, trauma studies, bicultural studies, the effect of war. So this all are including these things in a war writers. The 11th September 2001 attack on the World Trade Center in New York City, as well as other acts of terrorism around the globe, have results in a new body of literature that consider the war on a terror. How World War changed the literature. While both Brooks and Mackerens, these both are the famous war poets or writers, lent patriotic tones to the sacrifices of war early in the conflict, as this time war on the war's restlessness, horrors, spavots, and darkness in reflections. Some, like English poet Wilfred Owen, shows it their duty to reflect the grim reality of the war in their works. So, this is a quotation by Wilfred Owen. I quote: all the poet today can do is one. That is why the true poet must be truthful. I unquote. In Anthem for the Doomed Youth, Owen describes soldiers who die as a cattle and the monstrous anger and the guns. So this is a quote by Owens, and Wilfred Owen is very famous poet of war. World War First, the war that was originally expected to be over by Christmas, dragged on the 4/4 with a grimed brutality brought on by the dawn of French World War. Writer then suddenly, like a cave in the smooth road, the war came. So this is a horror of war and trauma of war. How literature and other writers are influenced and traumatized by the wars. Literature and cinema. The impact of cinema on early 20th century literary and moral broadly culturally consciousness has until recently been neglected. Yet to be looked back at the period is it find that film consciousness was everywhere. In 1928, Kenneth McFreeze, co-editor of the avant-garde film genre, Close-Up Right, the cinema has become so much a habit of thought and word and deed as to make it impossible to visualize modern consciousness without it. In the same year, the poet H.D. Hilda Doolittle, a fellow contributor to Close Up, claimed that the world of the film today is no longer the world of the film. It is the world there has never been, perhaps, since the days of the Italian Renaissance, so great a stirring in the mind and soul of the world consciousness. She was writing her about Russian films, but the promise of cinema was its internationalism, its creation of a visual language that transcended culture and linguistic differences. And that for H.D. Hilda Doolittle, as for many other early films, enthusiasts did not survive the transition to sound in the late 1920s and early 30s. World War First in films. Filmmaking became part of World War making through documentary films, newsreels, and film narratives produced by governments or by private films companies. So during the after World War and during the World War, there are so many documentaries which were made by the governments on other film private companies were made on wars. Uh, there in the films, they used genre combined films, propaganda films, and anti-war films, and also they were focusing on the gender and historical documents. So some film scholars look at historical accuracy to assess other looks at the war film primarily as the metaphor. So they will also use the war as a metaphor. Cinematic fiction, the impact of the cinema on the American novel up to World War II. So this is a book. This book examines American cinematic classes and also looks at some lesser known figures such as Carl Ventens and Tom Cromer. The phrase cinematic fiction has now been generally accepted into critical disorder, but is usually applied to the post-war novels. The book asks a simple question. Given their fascination with the new medium of film, did American novelists attempt to apply cinematic method in their own writing? This is a question which are asked by the writer. From its very beginning, the cinema has played a special role in defining American culture. Covering the period from the 1910s up to the Second World War, the book offers insight into the classical, such as The Great Gatsby by Fitzgerald and The Grapes of Wrath, discussing major writers' critical writing on the films and active participation in filmmaking. It is carefully not to portray cinema as a single of stable entry. So, some novelists drew on a silent film, other looks to the Russian theorists for the inspiration, and yet other turns to continual filmmaker rather than to Hollywood. So, films were very good medium to understand wars as a genre, and also films were a medium to explore the war genre into the today's time. Man, War and Film. This is also a book by Stavely House. Is an artistic filmmaker whose work has been screened worldwide and has collaborated closely with the Northwest Film Archive UK. He is an Emeritus Professor at the Manchester University, UK. Howley's book is part of description of the films, part reclamation of a largely unknown genre of war times, filmmaking, partly an account of the Burma camping, and partly a discussion of war and memories. The Calling Blinky series of films. This is a series of films. In that series, also they were talking about wars. By the combined cinematography, service produced towards the end of the Second World War were on one-reel films in which soldiers gave short-spoken message to the camera as a means of connection the front line and the home front. So in the this series of films, the soldiers who are part of World War First and Second, they were giving the message to the other people or normal citizens, like what happened in the war and what they experienced in the war, and what's the situation of their in the war, and also their mindset, and how they were feel they are far away from their home, and how they feel in the war. So this is a screenshot of ChatGPT, which is giving a good explanation about my presentation's topic. I cannot include this whole all topics in one presentation, like realism and modernism, other topics like psychological trauma, propaganda, post-war recovery. So all these points were given by ChatGPT. These are works cited. Now you can ask me a question. Thank you.
Drashti, how did the trauma of the World War One and World War Two impact the artistic styles and the techniques of the writer and the filmmaker?
We all know that these world wars are very traumatic for everyone, like who is part of that and who were not a part of them. But also, this is also very influential. This have impact on the artistic style and artists and also filmmakers, they were exploring the things of the psychological trauma, and also surrealism image and symbolism of the world wars, and also they were using the psychology of the soldiers, and they were using these things of the soldiers and their experience into their films, and also into their poems and works. So this is very we can say the very important to note that world wars have a very best or bad both impact on the filmmakers and writers.
Drashti, my question is how has the influence of World War on literature and films affected popular culture and society as a whole?
This, as I also mentioned in my presentation, writers are using this technique or genre to explain about how the soldiers and they were in back 1920s or in the World War First or in the World War Second. They were using this. Things and emotionally connected with the other people, so they were using this artists or the filmmakers using this popular culture and societal views on the soldiers or a war. Like they were also making the genres like anti-war things. So this is things which are included in my presentation also, and I hope you are understand and you are satisfied with my answer. Thank you.
Hello everyone. On the last day of our presentation, I am dealing with the topic Animal Farm as Dystopian Literature. This is my personal informations. So, table of content, first introduction, then about author, then dystopia definition, then characteristics of dystopian literature, then dystopia in literature. Examples are Brave New World of Aldous Huxley and 1984 of George Orwell. Then Animal Farm as dystopian literature. In this, the allegory and intention in Animal Farm. Then conclusion and work citation. So, the archetypal tale Animal Farm is a unique blend of political history as well as the social scenario. The description of the situation offered a significant impact over the literary globe. The fictional tale of Animal Farm also unmasks the brunt of corrupted power as well as obnoxious leadership over the unfortunate individual of that era. Thus, the power may be symbolized as the ability to bring or implement changes. Such type of changes or alternates may prove optimistic or bring about evil result for the less fortunate individuals. Apart from this, George Orwell also highlighted that control as well as total domination are recognized as well as sign of greed and brutality. After attainment of power or control, an individual gets influenced by the thought of greed. This is mainly due to the unfair treatment by the owner of the manor farm. And about author George Orwell, pseudonym of Eric Arthur Blair. He was born in June 25, 1903 at Motihari, Bengal, India and died in January 21st, 1950 at London, England. He was an English novelist, essayist and critic famous for his novel Animal Farm in 1984. The latter a profound anti-utopian novel that examines the danger of totalitarian rules. And George Orwell state in his Why I Write about totalitarianism or about his work that every line of serious work that I have written since 1936, it is a time of civil war, has been written directly or indirectly against totalitarianism and for democratic socialism as I understand it. His notable works are A Clergyman's Daughter, A Hanging, Animal Farm, 1984, Burmese Days Coming Up for Air. Then dystopia, the definition. The noun dystopia is often used synonymously with dystopian literature. Dystopia is identified with the failed utopia of 20th century totalitarianism. Dystopia means extreme coercion, inequality, imprisonment, and slavery. Often this is described as some concept of collectivism run wild, though some include conformist tendencies in liberal societies which encourage egalitarian repression and intolerance. This indicates three main interrelated form of the concept of dystopia. First is the political dystopia, then environmental dystopia, and technological dystopia. Among these types, it is the totalitarian politic dystopia which is chiefly associated with the failure of utopia aspiration and which has received the greatest historical attention. Beside the more malevolent type of early society, five models pertinent to the modern collectivist political dystopia merit mentions are militarized societies, second, slavery, third, despotism, fourth is prisons, and fifth, diseased species. Then characteristic of dystopian literature are an oppressive or authoritarian government and laws of individual freedom, a dehumanized population, a restricted or distorted language, a bleak and oppressive atmosphere, a critique of contemporary society. Then dystopia in literature. We have so many examples of dystopian literatures like 1984, George Orwell, then Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, and so many others. Amongst them, we'll discuss Brave New World of Aldous Huxley and 1984 of George Orwell. Huxley's society is placed about 600 years into the future, a society where babies are produced in bottles, where every appetite is gratified immediately, where total promiscuity is the sexual norm, where mental and physical conditioning approaches the ultimate. And for all these societies, divergence from our own, it creates a speak like the properent 20th century Englishman. The massive social and technological changes projected by Huxley seem to have had no effect on their language. Huxley's novel presents a society which is the very antithesis of societies proposed throughout the history of ideas. It is diametrically opposed to such various models as Plato's Republic in ancient Greece, Augustine's City of God in the medieval period, and Roger Williams' Providence Plantation in the New World. A Brave New World is a society based on presupposition which deny fundamental assumption about man and reality, which were foundational for societal view from the past. Then George Orwell's 1984. 1984, published shortly before Orwell's death in 1949, is set in dystopian future in which three superpower, Oceania, Eurasia, and Astasia, Oceania, Eurasia, and Astasia control the globe. Focusing on Oceania, specifically Airstrip 1, formerly England, the novel explores a form of totalitarian government in which even the inner thoughts and beliefs of citizens are policed. The novel managed to embed key abstract notion about totalitarianism, a political term that emerged in the late 1930s, in striking concrete image of visceral and easy to grasp the thought police, thought crimes, and double think, permanent telescreen, surveillance, and the notion that Big Brother is watching you, and ending with the terrors of Room 101 as a vision of the dissolution of the self. And through this dialogue, we can understand the entire situation of that society of 1984 on the view of dystopia or totalitarian. That it is said by Party, in our world, there will be no emotion except fear, rage, triumph, and abasement. Everything else we shall destroy everything. We have cut the lines between child and parent and between man and woman. In the future, there will be no wives and no friends. The sex instinct will be eradicated. We shall abolish the orgasm. There will be no loyalty except loyalty to the party. There will be no love except the love of Big Brother. Then Animal Farm as dystopian literature. This novel was written largely in 1944. The so-called fairy tale openly criticized the Soviet Union, particularly Stalin, at a time when Great Britain was firmly committed to its ally against Nazi Germany. Finally published in 1945, the novel engendered some controversy but was Orwell well received in both Great Britain and the United States. Intended by Orwell to be a warning against the Stalinist perversion of socialism, Animal Farm was immediately interpreted by some to be a whole cloth attack against socialism and communism. And one dialogue on the starting of the novel, we found the speech of Old Major. Here George Orwell tried to attack on the politics also, and if we see the interpretation of political interpretation of Animal Farm, we found the old measure stand as Marx, and Marxism stand here we could find in the speech of Old Measure, and he said that, and even the miserable lives we lead are not allowed to reach their natural span. No animal escaped the cruel knife in the end. You, young brokers, who are sitting in front of me, every one of you will scream your lives out at the block within a year. To that horror, we all must come. Cows, pigs, hens, sheep, everyone, even the horses and the dogs have no better fate. You, boxer, the very day that those great muscles of yours lose their power, Jones will sell you to the nakers who will cut your throats and boil you down for the fox hunt. As for the dogs, when they grow old and toothless, Jones ties a brick round their necks and drown them in the nearest pond. Then George Orwell once stated in his Why I Write about the Animal Farm that I will only say that of late years I have tried to write less picturesquely and more exactly. In any case, I find that by the time you have perfected any style of writing, you have always outgrown it. Animal Farm was the first book in which I tried with full consciousness of what I was doing. To fuse political purpose and artistic purpose into one whole. I have not written a novel for 7 years, but I hope to write another very soon. It is bound to be a failure. Every book is a failure, but do know with some clarity what kind of book I want to write. Then, Animal Farm include the use of propaganda, indoctrination, and fear to control the animal's thoughts and behavior, the suppression of a dissenting voice, and the manipulation of history to serve the interest of ruling class. This novel warns against the danger of totalitarianism, propaganda, and the abuse of power. It portrays the transformation of a once egalitarian society into a totalitarian regime where the ruling class oppresses and exploits the other animals for their own benefits. Animal Farm represents the idea that in a dystopian society, the ruling class often use propaganda and misinformation to control the thoughts and behavior of the population, creating a distorted reality in which the leader is always right and any dissenter voice are silenced or punished. In Animal Farm, we find very many dialogue that shows the misinformation by leaders and manipulation of by leaders that Napoleon is always right. Another dialogue is it had become usual to give Napoleon the credit for every successful achievement and every stroke of good fortune. You would often hear no hen remark to another under the guidance of our leader, Comrade Napoleon, I have laid 5 eggs in 6 days, or 2 cows enjoying a drink at the pool, would exclaim, thanks to leadership of Comrade Napoleon, how excellent this water taste. And the other is, if Comrade Napoleon says it, it must be right. The changes to the commandment in Animal Farm reflect the dystopian concept of the manipulation of language and information by those in power, where words and phrases are redefined or distorted to serve the interest of the ruling class. And there we find the commandment changing. First, there is the all animal are equal, and after the ruling of Napoleon, there is all animal are equal, but some animal are more equal than other. It shows the manipulation of language and information by leaders. Throughout Animal Farm, Orwell's main weapon of choice is Orwell's striking satire. In fact, the entire book can be viewed as a 100-page satiric look at politics and human life. Not only do we see human beings overthrown by pigs and chickens, but all the animals can talk and some can ever even read and write. Naming one of the pigs, Napoleon, is also significant. The carefully chosen names are both realistic and highly suggestive of their owner, personalities, and roles in the fable. Later in the story, after Napoleon takes over, we see him declaring days of celebration on his birthday and not allowing the other animal to call him Napoleon, but rather our leader, comrade Napoleon. So, in Animal Farm, the allegory and intention. Animal Farm tells the story of group of farm animals, that is Russians, then overthrow their bumbling alcoholic farmer, Mr. Jones, as Tsar Nicholas II, in order to achieve an idealistic vision of the future set down for them by an egging old measure as Karl Marx. Once Mr. Jones is driven off the farm, the animal begins setting up their new government, naturally led by the pigs, who are seen as the cleverest of animals. The lead pigs, Napoleon as Joseph Stalin and Snowball as Leon Trotsky, take charge of nascent self-governed farm which at first seems to prosper. Due to ideological difference, Napoleon and Snowball begin to quarrel, and Napoleon eventually ordered a pack of dogs under his commands to chase his rival Snowball off the farm. What follows is a series of betrayal of the animal by the ruling class of pigs. The seven basic tenets of animals communism, painted on the wall of the barn, are slowly corrupted or to fit the needs of Napoleon. The farm animals are by and large too dumb to notice until the pigs are sleeping in beds, wearing clothes, walking on two legs, and meeting Mr. Pilkington as Great Britain and the United States and other farmer for trade negotiation. The novel ends with the animals outside the farmhouse looking from pig to man and from man to pig and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was man, which was which. Orwell intended the allegory to be against capitalistics and communist alike, with his major goal to be a warning against totalitarianism, but it was not taken that way by intelligence agencies on either side. So I prompt to ChatGPT that Animal Farm is dystopian literature, and it gave me the simple answer. If we want to know about the dystopian literature and Animal Farm is dystopian literature, then it will be good. But if we want to know more about it, then it is not given that much good answer. Then, in conclusion, Animal Farm is a classic example of dystopian literature that warns against the dangers of totalitarianism and the need for vigilance in protecting against oppression. Orwell's allegorical tale demonstrates the insidious nature of power and the potential for corrupt leaders to manipulate and exploit their followers, making it a timeless cautionary tale. Orwellian concepts such as Big Brother and some are more equal than others enter into the public lexicon. However, this organization also unwittingly provides the world with a vocabulary that is potentially well suited to criticizing the United States in the 21st century. This is our work citation. Thank you.
Gayatri, my question is that how does the character of Napoleon embody the danger of authoritarianism in the animal farm?
Okay. In the Animal Farm, we find the Napoleon as the leader or authoritarian Personality. He proved so many times in this novel as a authoritarianism and a dystopian leader that he always manipulate the other animal, and he always in want of power, and he always want to be a man like thing. So
Question is not yet posted.
I posted earlier when we start conclusion.
This is the previous one.
No,
This one.
no.
But here it does not come. This is the previous one.
So then I post again.
Post again. Not in YouTube also.
Gayatri, my question is, how does the language used in Animal Farm contribute to its portrayal of dystopian society?
Language in Animal Farm by George Orwell is presented in many ways. First, we can say that he used the language for satire on society, human being, and government. And other most important is when Napoleon is leader. George Orwell used language for manipulation of manipulation to other animal, and this is the feature of dystopian society. And he used many times that you have to say comrade, dear comrade Napoleon, and we love to Napoleon, we love to our leader. This type of manipulative language that used by George Orwell in Animal Farm, that shows the dystopian society. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katariya Ghanshyam, and my topic of presentation is the beat generation and its influence. This is my introduction. Table of content. In this presentation, I will discuss about what is beat generation and its origin, the important writer and their work, and the influence of beat generation and conclusion. The Beat Generation. The Beat Generation was a literary subculture movement started by the group of authors whose work explored and influenced American culture and politics in the post-war era. The bulk of their work was published and popularized by the silent generations in 1950s, better known as beatniks. The central elements of beat culture are the rejection of a standard narrative values, making a spiritual quest, the exploration of American and Eastern religion, the rejection of economic materialism, explicit portrayals of human condition, experimentation with psychedelic drugs, and sexual liberation and exploration. The origin of Beat Generation. In 1914 and 1948, John Holmes, in his interview of about his novel Go, he said about his character that this is really a beat generation, and from there the beat culture started to recognized as beat generation, and then uh, the interviewer wrote this beat generation in his article, and then the origin of the word beat are obscure, but the meaning is only too clear to most Americans. So more than mere weariness, it implies the feeling of having been used, of being raw. It evokes a sort of a nakedness of mind and ultimately of soul, a feeling of being reduced to the bedrock of consciousness. In short, it means being undramatically pushed up against the wall of oneself. A man is a beat when he goes broke and wagers the sum of his resources on a single number, and the young generation has done that from earlier youth. The word beat is also said to be derived from the word beatitude. uh, the people constitute this group called the Beat Generation. It refers to a group of friends, the writer Ginsberg, Carr, Kerouac, and Burroughs, and their other friends who had worked together on poetry, prose from the mid 40s to late 50s. Those are the three important writers of the Beat generation. They are considered as the pioneers of the Beat generation. First is Jack Kerouac, who wrote the novel On the Road, and in this novel, he wrote about his experience of traveling across the America with his friends, and he created this novel. The second is William S. Burroughs, and he is famous for his novel Nectar Lunch. And in this novel, he wrote various fiction stories, and then he combined it's more like a non-linear type of stories that is combined in this fictional work. And the third is Alan Ginsberg. He wrote the poem Howl, and it is a free verse poem, and is the he took very liberty in this poem, creating this poem. The influence of Beat Generation. The writers of Beat Generation wrote about escaping society. The confessional writing style used by the Beats to differentiate themselves from the American mainstream indicates a break from their predecessors. Instead of trying to forge a new political or economic position, the Beats are more intent on escaping from one. As the outsider of the lost generation, unable to identify their place in what they perceive as a seemingly aggressive and stifling social ethos. Beach rights rely instead on their rebellion against that ethos. The era was after World War, and the economy was started to stable in America, and then the new generation of 40s and 50s, they tried to escaping the social values and the economy. The madness in writing. By adopting the mad persona for different characters throughout their writing, beat writers use insanity as a cultural site of ideological contestation and as the fundamental break from the American ethos that Metal discusses. The beats do not strive to uphold one single ideology, but to instead reject the prevailing one. They use characters that implies outsider status in their very cultural stereotypes. The madman launch a figure expels from the mainstream society can provide new insights about problems facing society because such people are at times unable to think in conventional ways. Their ideas, therefore, are often disjointed and non-linear. As I said in the previous slide, the a novel Necked Lunch is that follows the similar pattern of writing, and the writers mostly wrote about madness and they differentiate their characters from the society. Isolation. Despite their idealization of the madman, Beat writer also demonstrated persistent anxiety surrounded this figure throughout their writing, and particularly a fear of permanent isolation. In Go, a novel by John Cleland Holmes, the crazy character Walter states that his neighbors are trying to get me taken away. Of course, the mainstream seeking to neutralize the threat that unconventional thinking present actually throw the mad from society itself. Unlike the beat counterculture that simply reject a previous community but cannot truly escape it, the neurotic finds himself trapped within a psych ward or insane asylum, places that offer no escape and no connection to society at large. So the beat culture created people who were different from the society, but yet they are not different. They are not divided in but the society they started to rejected them as they were different from the normal society social norms. These also the beat generation also create the influence the hippie culture also, and those people were often uh, drug addict, and they created their own way of looking toward the life, and they escape from their home and they travel, and they are addicted with various drugs, and they are from different they follow the different cultural values also. uh, apart from this difference from the mainstream culture and the beat generation, there is also this that the woman's place in beat culture, that the mostly women's were just uh, from they were very distant from this. They followed the beat culture, but they were not completely in that. For Joyce Johnson, this is the female writer. The whole beat scene had very little to do with the participation of women as artists themselves. The real communication was going on between the men, and the women were there as onlookers. So this says very much about the woman's place in this beat culture. This talented woman, some of whom wrote incredible and revolutionary prose, were the wives barely acknowledged by their male peers. So that was the position of women's and women's writers in the beat culture. The photo is of Joyce Johnson, who wrote the novel Minor Characters, and it was popular very much. This is my work cited. Thank you.
Ghanshyam, my question is that what is the legacy of the beat generation today? How has its influence continued to shape American literature and culture in the 20th century, 21st century?
The beat culture provided the way of looking to the new generation that was after the post World War, and they abandoned their culture, and it was evolving throughout the World War. The American culture was evolving. That they already had. Progressed in their cultural values, but after the post World War, and then the economy started to stabilize, the new generation started to look way with the life with a new way, and they started to abandon the past values, and they became travelers and free-minded, and they thought about economy and sexuality and free manners.
Sir, I have posted other question.
Ghanshyam, what is your opinion about the female role in beat generation?
The female role was the outlookers only. They now from the side they looked this beat generation. They were part of it, but unrecognizably. In my last slide, I said that it was that the female writers were merely recognized. They are not that famous, but some of the female writers also became famous in that beat culture, and they wrote about the literature, and they became famous also. Thank you.
Hello, dear friends. I am Gopi Dervaliya. Today, I am going to deal with this topic Dadaism as an art movement. This is my personal information. These are the topics introduction, what is Dadaism, the ideas of Dadaism, and Dadaism as an art movement, and then conclusion. Introduction. Dada was an international art movement originating in the early 20th century. It created absurd, nihilistic, and sometimes incomprehensible art. Dada blurred the lines between visual, performance, and literary arts. It was led by artists like Hugo Ball, Marshall Duchamp, and Sophie Tobel. Its legacy shook the art world and quite possibly changed the definition of art itself. What is Dadaism? Dadaism began with a group of artists and poets who were associated with the Caber Voltaire. Hugo Ball and Amy Hengix found this political performance space on February 5, 1916 in Zurich, Switzerland. This is the picture of Hugo Ball and Amy Hennings. Though it closed soon after, this space was pivotal for the inception of the Dadaist movement. The cabaret, Voltaire held spoken word, dance, and performance art shows. They were experimental and relatively strange, breaking artistic norms while trying out new forms of poetry and movement. These experiments would come to be known as Dada art. The term Dada is said to have no meaning at all, much like the art itself. One could argue having no meaning carries meaning, but that is for another discussion. A possible origin story claims that artist Richard Hullensbeek slid a knife into a dictionary and hit the term Dada. This was a colloquial French term for a hobby horse. Others believe that the name came from the should a baby makes, connecting to the childlike absurdity of the movement. Dadaism emerged at a time of great stress and change in the period during and after World War One. It emerged in Zurich, the peaceful dead center of the war at the Cabaret Voltaire, and through intellectual contacts and minor publications spread to Paris, Berlin, and New York. Birth of Dadaism. Dadaism quickly became famous because it often adopted a directly provocative tone with its audience. In fact, insulting the audience was a common practice. Many great artists and thinkers fireband faced intellectual resistance in his attempt at radical innovation in thought and epistemology. He responds with irony, cynicism, and humor. For him, Dadaism meant humor and an inability to be differential to concepts and ideas that had gained a life and a seriousness of their own. The ideas of Dadaism. There is three ideas of Dadaism. First is spontaneity. Spontaneity was an appeal to individually and violent cry against the system. Romanian poet and performance artist Tristan Zara wrote that literature is never beautiful because beauty is dead. It should be a private affair between the writer and himself. Second is negation. To a Dadaist, negation meant sweeping and cleaning away the art establishment by spreading demoralization. Morality, they said, has given us charity and pity. Morality is an injection of chocolate into the veins of all. God is no better than bad. Cigarette butt and an umbrella are as excellent as God. Everything has illusory importance. Man is nothing. Everything is of equal unimportance. Everything is irrelevant. Nothing is relevant. Third is absurdity. Everything is absurd, everything is paradoxical, and everything is opposes harmony. Zara's Dada Manifesto 1980 was a resounding expression of Dadaism is an art movement. The Dada exhibition at the National Gallery of Art in Washington D.C. and presents some 400 articles, paintings, sculptures, and film, and also sound recording by more than 40 artists. The show, which moved to New York's Museum of Modern Art, French painter Marcel Duchamp later joined the movement and became essentially its most articulate spokesman. Duchamp challenged the motion of art and the confines within which it excited by presenting the world with a urinal taken out of its natural environment and presented as a sculpture piece, the fountain. A series of paintings, sculptures, and collages from the Dada period, which rebelled against the dominant political and cultural narrative. These are the main Dadaists and their paintings: Marcel Duchamp, Raoul Haussmann, and Jean Earp. These are the paintings of Marcel Duchamp, Fountain and LHOOQ. Fountain, Marcel Duchamp was the most prolific artist of Dadaism, and he was associated. He also associated with Cubism, Futurism, and early conceptual art. This is a very famous painting of Duchamp, and it's representing a major shift in the function of art in society. Second most famous painting of Duchamp, LHOOQ, created from an expensive postcard of Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. The piece features elements of satire rejecting the aesthetic of high art. Second is Raoul Haussmann and famous paintings. The first is the art critic. Haussmann, a leader of Dada movement in Berlin, he was also an expressionist artist. His poetry was known for being especially provocative. Haussmann's ardent criticism of the superficiality of the art world. A series of magazine and newspaper photographs, and including some downs. We can see that in this picture. Uses of newspaper, photographs, magazine, and also drawn elements. Second is the mechanical head. The mechanical head. It was also a famous painting of him. It was crafted from a hairdresser's wig dummy, a ruler, a pocket watch, a wallet, pieces from a camera, and other found items. The sculpture thus questions all precedent depictions of intellectualism and depth, showing the subject only as it related to the superficial material world around it. We can see that in this picture, uses of a pocket watch and a wallet and other things. Jean Earp's shirt front and fork. Jean Earp, also known as Hans Earp, was a German-French painter, sculptor, and poet. He was a founding member of the Dadaist movement. Shirt front and fork is part of a series of painted wooden relief sculptures that Earp crafted in the 1920s. The fork on the right is easily identifiable, while the form on the left represents the front of a shirt, but also resembles a large tooth or a human face. The piece represents Earth's stylistic shift between periods.
In conclusion, in short, Dada is a response to the world when all the usual methods have broken down. It is the recognition that dinner party conversations, Hollywood blockbusters, and Silicon Valley are not how life actually is. This is a false reality and order. And so the Dada movement expressed itself in absurdity. Zara, the closest you get to a Dadaist philosopher, put it like this: like everything in life, Dada is useless. Dada is without pretension as the life should be. Dada rejects all systems, all philosophy, all definite answers, and all truth. Dadaism also dispelled exciting notions of typography and design layouts with its order, paving the way for design as we know it today. These are my work citation, and thank you. Now you can ask me questions.
Gopi, what are the political and social influence on Dadaism?
Yes. um, as I mentioned in my slide, that Dadaism emerging in after the World War One and a period of profound politics and social upheavals, and the movement mostly influenced. The movement deeply influenced by the horror of war and as well as in the rise of political rise of political and also political ideological and such as the communism and feminism.
Gopi, my question is, how did the Dadaism challenge the notion of art and beauty?
Yes, Dadaism challenged the notions of art and beauty by rejecting traditional value and the absurd and the nonsensical, as we see that Dadaist works often features unconventional materials that such as found objects and also the rejected objects, and make art more beautiful and aesthetically pleasing.
A very good evening to all of you. On the last and final day of presentation semester 2, my today's topic is stream of consciousness and exploration of a literary technique. This is my personal information. In the table of contents, these are some major points which I am gonna discuss about in my entire presentation. Definition of a stream of consciousness, importance of understanding stream of consciousness in literature, notable characteristics, examples from literature, and conclusion. So let's begin with an introduction. Stream of consciousness technique occupies an important position in 20th century fiction. The literary technique that represents the thoughts and feelings of a character as they occur. The term was first used by the psychologist William James in the Principles of Psychology in his book in the year 1890. In the article named What is the Stream of Consciousness Technique by Lawrence Edward Bowling, in that Frederick J. Hoffman observed and made a comment that writers and critics are both confused by the idea of interior monologue or the stream of consciousness as it is more primarily known. So, the stream of consciousness is a new narrative technique which plays a very important role in the 20th century literature. Stream of consciousness is a new narrative style which depicts the character's thought process through their minds, which depicts the character's thoughts process through their minds in a very realistic way. Here I have taken one line from the article that writers and critics are both confused by the idea of interior monologue or the stream of consciousness, because in some way both the terms are often used as a synonym for each other. But here we have to understand that interior monologue and the stream of consciousness both depicts the same idea, that it represents the character's thoughts towards the readers, and that is why we can say that perhaps they both referred as the same in one or the another way. Definition of stream of consciousness. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary of English Language, stream of consciousness means the continuous, unedited, chronological flow of conscious experience through the character's mind. Importance of understanding stream of consciousness in literature. In literature, the phrase refers to the flow of these thoughts with reference to a particular character's thinking process. This literary device is usually used in order to provide a narrative in the form of the character's thoughts instead of using dialogues or descriptions. The thought process in the mind of character is never coherent and jumps from one to another. The cruel effects of the World War had changed people's thoughts, and as a result, literature too changed along with that due to the fundamental human experiences. Men came from the war disillusioned with the way that people saw, did, and experienced. So that is how this new technique emerged during the 20th century for the modern writers. As we have seen the definition of stream of consciousness, now we have to understand that what is this literary technique played a vital role in literature. That this new technique, stream of consciousness, is very much important in modern times, or we can say 20th century, because it puts more emphasis on a character's thoughts rather than any kind of dialogues or descriptions. The thought process in the mind of the characters is never coherent. Coherent means not logical, which is logical, or we can say continuous, but it never coherent because it jumps from one thought to the another. If it is coherent, then it became very much easy for us to understand. But in this new narrative style, stream of consciousness, the character's thoughts are jumps from one to another, and that is why it is difficult to understand. The cruel after the cruel effects of the World War, people's way of looking at the things also changed, and that is why along with that literature also changed due to the fundamental human experiences. And that is why this new technique, which is a stream of consciousness, helped a lot in depicting or reflecting the people's thoughts or ideas about what they saw, did, and experienced during the World War. Notable characteristics of stream of consciousness: it records multifarious thoughts and feelings. In this technique, the speaker's thoughts are more often depicted as overhead in the mind. The authors of this technique follow visual, auditory, tactile,
associative impressions, and express then using interior monologue of the characters. The main aim of this technique is at expressing in words about flow of characters' thoughts and feelings in their minds. The technique named stream of consciousness aspires to give readers the impression of being inside the mind of the characters. So, these are some major characteristics of this new literary technique, we can say, or this technique helped readers to be being inside about the mind of the characters. That through this technique we can understand that what is the character is we can understand about his thoughts or ideas. Some examples from literature. The novelist must build the world in which his characters will live. For the stream of consciousness novelist, this problem is one of unusual importance. James Joyce postpones using lengthy stream of consciousness passages until he has established the outline of the main characters, their relationships, and the world in which they live. For James Joyce, his fiction is marked by moments of intense realization when his characters suddenly discover truths about themselves and are given moments of intense sight. So, as an example, I have taken the references of two novels. One is James Joyce novels, The Ulysses, and the other one is Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. In both the novels, we can greatly explore the idea of this new literary technique, which is stream of consciousness. But James Joyce postponed using the lengthy and descriptive ideas until he established the outline of the main characters and their relationships with each other. Okay, so let's see that examples. One example is from James Joyce novels Ulysses. James Joyce novel Ulysses can be considered as one of the best example of this stream of consciousness technique. The characters in Ulysses have their own problems and they have an unbroken flow of perception, feelings, and thoughts in waking mind. The mental process of characters is vividly shown through stream of consciousness technique. James Joyce's great novel that sees the work as an expansive and encompassing study of the mind, which one can organize and interactions with the world. So, one of the most famous example of this technique is James Joyce's novels Ulysses. In this novel, James Joyce interferes by saying that the stream of consciousness is a one kind of technique in which we can understand that character's mind is never static, as we know that the thoughts are continuously coming in our mind and our mind cannot be static because the thoughts are continuously there in our mind, and that is why it depicts the real problems of the characters in the novel, and it vividly shown through stream of consciousness technique. In the novel Ulysses, the narrator of the novel is passing from one thought to another thought, and not even he is taking time in breathing, and that is why the narrator is continuously passes from one thought to another thought. Another example is Virginia Woolf's novel Mrs. Dalloway. The novel details a day in the life of Clarissa Dalloway, who is the main character and narrator in the novel, a fictional high society woman in post-First World War England. The novel addresses Clarissa's preparations for a party that she will host that evening. With an interior perspective, the story travels both forwards and backwards, means past and present in time, and in out of character's mind to construct an image of Clarissa's life. So that is how this novel also explores the technique of stream of consciousness by Virginia Woolf through the character of Clarissa Dalloway. This novel, Mrs. Dalloway, written by Virginia Woolf, does not depict any kind of plot, or we can say vivid picture or imagery, but it depicts about the one important character and narrator who is Clarissa Dalloway, who continuously passes from one thought to another, and at one time she goes back to in her past memory, and after that she came back into her present memory. So that is how the novel, we can say that Virginia Woolf succeeded best way in depicting the new literary term, which is the stream of consciousness, through her novel. Conclusion. To conclude, one can see the role of stream of consciousness in literature is typically as a character study. It is such a purposeful and innovative in the modern prose style. Hence, the study of this literary technique tried to locate how far these novelists have succeeded in achieving it. So, the stream of consciousness is typically, we can say that it is a study about a character and his or her thoughts, and it is very purposeful and innovative also in the modern prose style. And as we look at it from the perspective of modern writers, then we can consider three main major who coined, we can say, used this term in their works, which is Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, and William Faulkner. These are my work citations. Thank you. And now questions can be asked.
Hetal, my question is, can stream of consciousness be used effectively in genres other than literary fiction such as poetry or non-fiction?
Okay, from my perspective, as I have taken examples from the novels like Mrs. Dalloway and James Joyce Ulysses, so I don't have that much idea that it can be used in a poetry or non-fiction. But according to my understanding, I feel that the stream of consciousness can be effectively used in novels.
Yes. Hetal, my question is how the stream of consciousness technique affects the reader's experience of literary work.
Okay, so stream of consciousness techniques affects the reader's experience of literary work in a very well way, because as we have seen that this technique has had a very great idea about we can know about the characters' past memories, or what happened with them in the past, and through this technique we can understand about these things. So this technique has a great idea about the we can say that how the characters passes from one thought to another thought, which is not coherent. And when any writer, or we can say novelist, applied this technique in their works, then it is very much useful or purposeful for us, that we can understand that sometimes what is difficult is that ideas which is presented is not coherent, but still we want to read it, because in one way or the other way we liked that technique which is used. Or I hope that my answer satisfied you. Thank you.
Very good afternoon to all. Today is our final day of our presentation, and I am going to give my presentation on a topic Expressionism is art movement. This is my personal information. Those are some points which I'm going through in my presentation. First, introduction, then Expressionism and its origin, history of Expressionism, then German Expressionist film, then Expressionism and dance, then new aesthetics, and then conclusion. So, I would like to start my presentation with introduction. Expressionism arose in Europe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries as a response to the Boger's complacency and the increasing mechanization and urbanization of society. Painters such as Vincent van Gogh, Paul Gogh, and Edmund Munch helped to lay the foundation for Expressionism in their use of distorted figures and vibrant colors schemes to depict raw and powerfully emotional states of mind. Monks the scream, for example, lithograph depicting a figure with a contorted the face screaming in horror. So, Expressionism is an art movement that roots in 19th century but came in full force in 20th century. And this art movement is very vast and very vast and very and this moment is this moment is different for many situations and for many its meanings. And there is many meanings for expressionism art and artist like self, psyche, nature, and sexuality, and many more things. And these expressionism affect many literary genres like music, art, architect, uh, uh, and painting also. So, Expressionism and its origin. The Expressionism came to life in countries such as Germany, where it served as a response to the horrors of World War One. There was no reaction to realism, which was dominant in the 19th century. Realism was a style of literature that attempted to represent reality as objectively and straightforward as possible. Expressionism, on the other hand, emphasized subjective experience and emotion. Although today the German book is acclaimed as the pioneer group in the German expressionist movement, movement. It is surprising to learn that neither the group nor any of the individual book artists were ever specifically called expressionist during the 1905 and 30 period of the book's existence. Even up to that moment in 1970, when Ernst Ludwig Kiernat permanently left Germany to reside in Switzerland, he had once been called an expressionist in his native land. And then history of expressionism as an art movement. The term expressionism indicates the conversatories of the sensitive or interpretative mode of sharing reactions. The word expressionism was first used in 1850, mostly to describe paintings where an artist's strong emotions were clearly shown. The popularity of expressionism increased when Antonin Matek 1910 coined the term. Accordingly to Zach, art historians envision to signify the opposite of expressionism and designate one of the main currents of art that express the highly subjective view of a wide range of modern artists. Then German expressionist film. Expressionist film emerged during the Weimar Republic era and was most pronounced in a number of films from the early 1920s. The stylistic and thematic concerns of expressionism are most fully and displayed in the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, designed by key figure from expressionist painting and theater. Caligari's highly stylized sets employ extreme angles, exaggerated proportions, and dizzying visual patterns. Then, expressionism and dance. In its relation to dance, expressionism must be approached through the diverse but related histories in the realms of theater, dance, and the visual arts. Those stories trace a tendency from the 19th century through the 1930s towards the exploration of movement and gesture as a primary language and communicator of inner life. Expressionism in dance is largely associated with the years 1911 to 1936 and the work in Switzerland and Germany of its primarily theorist Rudolf Leben and choreographer Mary Wigman. Those are pictures of choreographer Mary Wigman. And then new aesthetics. Ludwig Meidner was one of the artists who were aware of the fact that the pace of their time couldn't be expressed through the painting technique of Impressionism anymore. In his article, Inline some Melen over Grosted Biden, published in 1940. He criticized the impressionistic way of portraying the city and emphasizing that the mixture of urban architecture cannot be painted in the same manner as followed. The new technique concentrates on light focus and usage of straight lights. The rays of light are connected in bundles and fall apart into scripts. They form constraint with the shadows of the buildings.
The pictures painted by Eric Hetal or Ernst Ludwig Kierkegaard follow those aesthetic principles. And then the interaction between the subject and city. The fascination for the life and pulse of the city is just one of many impulses that inspire the expressionist to pick the metropolis out as a central theme of their work. In case of Monks' painting, we only can guess why the subject is screaming and the elements of the maybe irritating civilization are presented in only through the bridge construction or ships, whereas the subject of Mader's paint picture is surrounded and seems to be assaulted by the city, its learning buildings or smoking chimneys. The sun is also a part of the irritation because in the matter of fact it is only a balloon. For Midner, the city becomes a place where the catastrophic versions happen. His pictures brand state or apocalyptic state reveal the city as place of threat and fear. This is a painting of Scream. Uh, then the demonic appearance of the city can be observed in some expressionistic poems too. George hymns text there got their steps and the demon their state can serve as examples. In their god their state, the city has the face of the biblical god named Baal. The personification city is surrounded by the atmosphere of evening and darkness. The streets are filled with millions of people diving in an aesthetic dance. The smoke of the chimneys transform into the smell of incense. Baal's personality is built on aggressive masculinity. He is furious, full of anger and irritated because he cannot eat and swallow. The last horses hovers far away from him. At the end of the poem, he is compared to butcher who is slaughtering the streets and sends the fire and fume to destroy and to eat them. Then conclusion. We know that art begin with stone carvings and writings which represented objects, animals, and rites that were organized by civilians at that time. Those terms and techniques are collected by archaeologists, and it is the proven evidence for their existence. Art history is the study of all art and cultural eternities. Art history carries us closer to the footprint of civilization throughout history because it's the story of us and our global force to create. Since every artwork is realistic and authentic. For example, when people look at Monk's painting, they have two different opinions. It might be a pessimistic or optimistic vision of life. These are my work cited. Thank you. Is there any question?
Hina, my question is, what is attitude of expressionist artist towards expressionism?
this expressionism is the art movement, which is very vast, and it is hard to understand because in different situation it had different meanings and different things. And expressionist artists are most of expressionist artists used to create their work upon their emotions and their feelings rather than anything else.
Now, my question is that why the piece of their time could not express in their work of art, as you mentioned in your slides.
Because this movement is this movement is very different and different from traditional movement, and this movement is denies such kind of traditional rules, and many expressionist artists don't follow it traditional style, and they don't make their art in traditional style, but they focus on their imagination and their emotion and their feelings. And that's why the piece of their time couldn't express in their works. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the last presentation of the day, and with this week, this season we come to an end to this rigorous season, and lots of work you have to do when the presentations are there. Constant concentration, working hard overnight and preparing the thing. So most of you did well. So far as your slides are concerned, your reading slides are concerned, it is very good. So from here, if you want to raise the level, then many of the suggestions which are made about turning it into academic writing or research-based writing, that still all of you are not doing. Some of you are doing appropriate qualitative citations, but everybody is still not able to. Till today also I was able to see some UK essays websites, which are websites for study material to help high school kids in preparing their assignment. So you should be referring to qualitative books, reference books and journals, articles, rather than such websites. That will improve the quality of your content, and you also will realize that how things can be written in academic context. By and large, things were good with everybody. So question answers still were not, all of you were not able to answer it thoroughly well. So in that aspect also you can keep in mind. One, even asking question is also something that still everybody is not able to ask appropriate question. So at one level there is lack of concentration. So you're not able to listen everything properly so that you can frame the question in a proper way. And it should be led with that curiosity to know more, which you think the speaker will be able to answer also. That way, if you try to locate your question, then perhaps the speakers also can understand and reply it in a better way also. Then you have to try to tackle the question. So that also everybody is not able to do thoroughly. That you can improve subsequently in the coming semesters. Okay, rest of the things were quite okay. Okay, so with this, let us end our session, this entire season of the presentation. Let me end the live streaming. And just a reminder for coming days, coming 3-4 days are also still quite hectic with digital portfolio presentation tomorrow, where you will be just a spectator. Now you don't have to do anything, but you will be a spectator there, but next year you will be doing. So you just have to visualize that just 1 year will pass away within no time, and you will be there doing the same kinds of presentation after 1 year. And then there will be annual function where again senior students will be making their presentations as leaders. You all might have joined the committees as members, but now next June you will be told to become leaders. So you will pick up the committees by looking at the presentations, that what work they are supposed to do, what they are able to do, what they are not able to do. That all they will try to say, and how you can make that committees work better if you become a leader. So that way you have to lead the committees and see that throughout the year something is done. So at the end of the year you can make a proper presentation on that also. That also you will observe, so that you can learn. So there is no way that you will be able to escape from not being a leader or not doing the work. That you can escape only if you leave department. You cannot come at your homes to grab you and then tell them make presentations. But so far as you are here, you will have to do. So when you observe them doing work on in annual function, which is more of an academic level. Annual function is not only, not at all like Nach and Gana, Bajana, nothing like that. It is academic where people will be highly tensed. Those who have to present, it is like presenting their performance as a leader throughout the year. And many of the committees might have not performed at all. So they are not very good in documenting also. Like they don't pick up photographs, or they don't have a system of posting anywhere where you can sit down and recall. We time and again tell you that social media is one of the best platforms to document your activities. So at the end of the year, you just sit down, you open the folder, one album, and you get everything, photograph, details, everything. So within 5 minutes, you can prepare your PPT or any report that you have to submit. Like as a teachers also, annually we have to submit our reports, that what we have done, where we had been for extension work, seminar, conferences, various things. So if we don't have that system, then at the end of the year, it is very difficult for us also to prepare the things. We don't have like personal secretaries. Like you have people like me as a personal secretary to remind you. Today also Upasna and Mansi, and they keep on making mistakes, as we have noted the other day. That even maybe to mentally retarded also this many times we did not remind. But in this group, or this is a normal thing every year with our students, that you keep on telling, but still there will be somebody who will not do the work. So entire class will never. Today it is this, then the next there is another person. But for me it is the class which will be repeatedly doing the same kind of thing. And so I believe that art students are very difficult to deal with. If societies do not respect art students and they don't give salary properly as compared to management or thing, I think they deserve that. Because their overall performance, individually people may be good, but as a group, and we are seeing that, we are experiencing also that how harassing things are. Simple things are there, that 2, 1, 2, 3 you have to do. But that also everybody is not doing. There is somebody who always creates a kind of anxiety for other people to complete the work. But that we have to overcome. We have to pinpoint that these are the lacking points, and we have to try to overcome those things. So when we don't have people to work for us, technology is the best secretary. Technology is the best assistant, which helps us in documenting our activities, which we will require at the end of the year. And then we have to present that what you have done throughout the year, and this is the best way to recall everything with photograph, with details, the date also, which is necessary, and everything is posted in such a way that we get it easily. And so we keep on telling you that you also someday will become professors and at good positions where annually you also have to give your profiles. And if you don't have a proper system of documenting, then it will be very difficult for you to manage your work also. If you do lot many works, then it will not. If you don't do anything, there is nothing to manage. If you have nothing to do throughout the year, there is nothing to present. There is no chart to prepare. There is nothing to display. That what you have done, nothing. Just there is an empty page. But if you do lot many things, then you have to also document everything. And then if there are more works that are done, then it becomes very difficult to remember everything. And so it helps. So as a part of that training, the leaders are informed right from the beginning that develop your own system of documenting the activities in such a way that at a fingertip you can get it. You don't have to ask anybody. It is at your fingertips, and you can just click some buttons and you get all the informations about the committee that you are heading. So you will see how many of them are able to do that, how many have failed. That also we will see. And they will present digital portfolio tomorrow, wherein also all your academic, non-academic, sports, cultural certificates, anything that is required will be uploaded. So anytime anybody is asking you, give me your passport size photograph, you will say that just 10 minutes and I will do that. Somebody says, give me a photocopy of this mark sheet or that mark sheet, you will say, well, just 10 minutes and I will forward it to you. So people might be surprised, how can you do that? But you are digitally documenting your academic career. So that is also you will see there. But this is what we keep on telling to all the students. And we know that even if they cannot give feedback at the end of the day, how can they do all this? સામાન્ય ફીડબેક માટે એટલા રિમાઇન્ડર આપવા પડતા હોય દરરોજ તો એ આવું કામ તો આપણા વિદ્યાર્થી કરી જ ન શકે એટલે કેટલા બધા નહીં કરી શકે અથવા their work will not be appropriately done. That also you will see. And then you will have to decide whether you want to be like that or those who are doing better. It is your choice that you will make, that you will try to be the better than the people who has performed there, or you want to be the worst. You may pick up a worst example also, and you can take it as a role model and do like that also. Or you can pick up the best example and try to improve from that also. It is all up to you, but it is very helpful if you do these things. It is tremendously helpful. It is very much helpful to us also in various capacities. We have this concept of capacity building, that how we build our capacities in multitasking and other kinds of things. So all these activities when we do, this also helps because we have to hone our skills. Are we still good with technology? Can we do live streaming single-handedly? Can we manage multitasking, like listening everybody, evaluating their work, finding points to be highlighted, good points, improvement points, and simultaneously you work with technology and other things also. And then lots of other communication that happens about administration and other things through WhatsApp and other thing that also goes on. So when you do this, you build your capacity that yes, we can. It is not impossible, but we can still do all these things also. And I also tell every time that I normally take very long lectures, sometimes full day lectures are there. But I have a capacity to listen full day also. And till at the end of the day, still mind is working to see what presentations are made and that also. So when I will get tired and I will feel that no, this is impossible, then I will stop taking long lectures. But this is my test, that can I endure 10 days, 5 days for another class, 5 for this class, 10 days, 6 hours throughout the day. Can my mind work from morning to evening? And with passions, you have to keep on listening the things and commenting and reminding everybody that your work is incomplete. And you have to also keep complete cool down also with all those things. Now, as soon as this will end, we will start managing tomorrow's work. So tomorrow's classroom arrangement, how the things will be there, from where they will get electricity, from where they will get internet, how the class will be, and that you have to start working. So this is the test, that if I can do at 50 plus age, then 20 plus age people can sit 12 hours. If I can sit 6 hours, then I can teach you for 12 continuous hours also. Once I will fail in this, I will start taking shorter classes. That no, now human capacity is not to listen more than this many hours then. But I don't believe in those this philosophy where people say that students can only listen up till 40 minutes or 45 minutes. Now these are all humbug things. We can listen up till 6 hours throughout the day, and still our mind remains alert and it can still grab the thing. So mind is very elastic. The way you can pull it, it will expand. It is not something which is limited. You can keep on. So this time also I pass a test. So next year you will have long classes, and if I will fail someday, then you will start. Then you can say that now don't take long classes because you are also not able to endure such a long sessions. Okay, so with this, let us end, and from tomorrow we will start doing the other works that we have to continue for